It's time for the Financial Crisis Talk Center with Ken Gross and David Einstandig from Thav Gross.
Credit card debt is number one. I view it as financial cancer.
40% of your gross income is going to just pay the debt service. You got no chance of getting out.
I would give up my credit score to get rid of debt.
Here's your host, Ken Gross.
So now it's time for another segment of the Financial Crisis Talk Center, and I want to do a duo segment. We're going to do this segment and the next segment.
A duo or a duel?
Say it again.
A duo or a duel?
Duel.
Speaking of the duel,
Is it a
how do you guys
No,
like your moonlighting job? Is it good?
What's the moonlighting job?
Well, you guys got to be bouncers at some type of bar on 8 Mile. I mean, do you like this?
Oh, the black shirts?
Yeah.
I mean, you got the muscle tee
It's
going.
warming up outside. It's time to go.
Brian's
with
got the semi-mock turtleneck.
It's time
and
to go
the
short
bald
sleeve
look.
on occasion.
It's just a button down
All right.
with a sweater.
Let me tell you what we're going to talk
Is that
about.
a V-neck?
Okay? Can
Okay.
I tell you what we're going to talk about?
Please do tell
Is
us
that a
what we're going to
V-neck?
talk about.
What we're going to talk about is we're going to do a case study that's going to try and wrap in many of the issues we've talked about, and the names have been changed to protect the innocent, and the facts have been modified as well. But this is basically a true story based on fact. And here it is. The story is called
Like E.
Charlie, the brother-in-law that was too nice.
I don't know. The case study so far means we might want to study a case of Bud Light the way the show's already going.
And well, the funny thing about this story, it ties into an issue that David and I encounter on a frequent basis with Brian when we do our seminars. Because there's a topic comes up in the seminar on occasion about guaranteeing debts for another person.
Bad idea.
And whenever that happens in the seminar, David and I look at each other and say, let's hope Brian contains himself and doesn't make the pontification speech. And then as we're looking at each
Got
other,
the same chance of Charlie Brown hitting the football.
This overwhelming force comes into the room.
You mean
lands on his skull, and he says,
never, ever, ever, ever guarantee a debt for anyone ever unless you intend to pay the debt yourself.
No, that's not what you say.
It is.
That
it's
would
what
be
I'm cleaning it
okay.
up for the radio.
What you always say in the seminar is never guarantee a debt for your children.
No, and then what's his tag?
Because then you're going to have to pay for the debt yourself.
And then he gives the tagline that we hate. He'll say, because your kids will let you down every time.
Yeah,
Yes.
and that's
Okay.
what,
Absolutely
and that
true.
gets us mad because that's not we don't necessarily think that that's the right thing that you shouldn't be telling our guests how to run their family with their children. But the point on the guaranteeing the debt for other third parties is certainly true. And how it ties back into this story is Charlie.
This is on
guaranteed
steroids.
debts.
This is on
Well,
steroids.
let's
And
make
paid
sure
the
we
price.
understand something here. The basic premise is when you guarantee a debt, you are just as responsible for the payment of that obligation as the other people signing on to it. And so when the other people that sign on to it run into financial difficulty, that debt is going to come on to you. So if you're not in a position to pay it yourself or take care of it or otherwise deal with it,
Or be happy about it.
you may run the risk of
Right.
losing your assets and losing your home because you were kind and you wanted to help someone else.
And you also have
point
to
well made.
understand real quickly, there's two types of guarantees. One is a guarantee of collection, and the other one is a guarantee of payment under the law. Most that you see are guarantees of payment, which means that the lender, the bank, whoever holds the right, does not have to first go to who's ever primary liable. They could go right to the guarantor and say, pay me. A guarantee of collection, they first have to try to collect from the kid or the daughter or the son.
Correct.
Big
In fact-
difference.
In fact, back it up for a second. So you understand something. A guarantee is a contractual obligation. It's called a suretyship. It's answering for the duty of another person. There's a statute of frauds that applies, which in a statute, you have to know, so people always say, get it in writing. Well, you can have a contractual obligation that's verbal unless there's a statute of frauds that says this contract must be supported by a writing signed by the party to be charged, which is the person responsible. Well, a suretyship or a guarantee is covered by the statute of frauds, and in order for a guarantee to be valid against you, you have to sign a writing agreeing to it. And then what David's referring to is when we see those writings, some of them are guarantees of payment, which is the majority of them always when it comes from a bank. And you can also have guarantee of collection, which would mean that the person who's owed the debt first has to exhaust their remedy against the primary person expected to pay before they can pursue the guarantor. So on a guarantee, you do have to have a writing because there is a statute of frauds. But in that case, typically that's what happens. So what lenders know they're not going to take a verbal assurance anyway on a guarantee.
But keep in mind, it doesn't have to be a formal blown heading.
No,
it could be a napkin.
Right.
It could even be an email.
Remember the napkin with
Bo Schembechler
and Tom Monahan years ago? That napkin satisfied the statute of frauds. It was a high-value napkin. There's no question about that. That goes back many, many years. All right, so let's talk about the story of these two of Charlie and Lucy and and their friends. All right, it's once upon a time we have two couples. Artie and Fran, and Charlie and Lucy. Artie wants to go into the printing business. Artie's married to Fran. They've got a couple of kids. He wants to go into the printing business, but he has no money, and he's not bankable. Can't go to the bank to borrow money. Fran's brother is Charlie. Good old Charlie. Charlie's a professional, making $300,000 a year. Charlie's married to Lucy. She's a nurse. She's making like $60,000 a year. They've got good income, living a good lifestyle. They've got a nice house. They have, in fact, Charlie drives a nice car. He's got a couple cars that he has.
Two kids.
Living the good life.
So he's agreeing to help Artie because Artie's kind of on hard times. We want to help Artie and Fran. So Charlie agrees to guarantee debts. He's going to guarantee him for a $200,000 bank loan for the bank. He's going to give him a guarantee on several expensive equipment leases that run up to $200,000 at the beginning. There's a lot of expenses there. We're going to go on. We're going to dig in more as to what Charlie does to help Artie get started in business, and then we're going to see how it all unfolds one step at a time. We'll be back after the break.
No one ever thinks that a serious injury can happen to them, but it can, and it does, and it can happen to you. And when it does, you need a fighter in that courtroom for you. Call me, Ben Johnson. Automobile accident, police misconduct, medical malpractice, product liability. You know what you're up against, how hard it is to get answers. When all you want is justice, call me, Ben Johnson. Whatever your legal crisis, I will fight for you. Call me today.
Ken Gross, attorney, talk show host, and leader in the law, reveals his secrets to leveling the financial playing field in his book, Dump Your Debt.
The rules of the game have changed. Now the banks get the bailouts at our expense. Dump Your Debt is your bailout. It tells you what you need to know to shed credit card debt, solve tax problems, and exit a house underwater.
Buy Dump Your Debt online at Amazon.com.
It's the game changer you deserve.
Don't let legal problems destroy your family or your life. Get the justice you deserve. I'm Sabrina Cronin of the Cronin Law Firm, and I'm here to make things right. My firm handles family law, business law, and even criminal law. We can handle all of your legal needs. So whatever you're facing, I'm here to get you justice. You can't afford not to call. Call 855-CRONIN-LAW today.
If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Thav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
Going from hourly to salary seemed like a good career move, but now you're working 60 hours a week instead of 40, and you aren't getting paid any of that extra time. You're stuck, right? Wrong. You can be on salary and still be entitled to overtime. If you've been wrongly denied such pay, you may be entitled to that and more. Gold Star Law is here to help you through your employment law problem, whatever it is.
Gold Star Law, protecting employees' rights. Call 1-800-WAGES-10 for a free consultation today.
Welcome back. All right, we're doing a case study. We're talking about Charlie, the brother-in-law that was too nice. Right? And did you guys notice Charlie's married to Lucy? Did those names ring a bell at all to either of you? I mean, you guys are young. Charlie.
Yes, Snoopy, we did.
Oh, you did. Okay. So, what about Lucy? Artie and Franny?
Artie and Franny? No, I will vouch for David.
Wait,
that's before our time.
I just made up Artie and Franny. Is that Joe's back here on our cameras. He thinks he knows who Artie and Franny.
Who's the honeymooners?
Close.
Wife? Wasn't it Artie?
It was Artie.
I don't know what his wife's name was.
We'll have to research that. Anyway, I want to, before we get back to what Charlie guaranteed, I want to emphasize where Charlie stood. He's making $300,000 a year. Lucy's making $60,000. They're living in a nice house, but it's got an $800,000 mortgage. Just to keep that in mind. He drives nice cars. Oh, by the way, this is Charlie. David, I know you like me to bring you toys. If you're listening on the radio, you don't know what I'm doing, but I'm showing him things from my children's toy chest back that are 30 years old that I raided from the basement. This is Lucy. She's a nurse. Notice she's got the red X on her. It took me a lot of time to find Lucy. They have a house. They're here. They're laying down at the moment. And then I also found a nice Corvette representing Charlie's favorite car, which happens to be 4 times bigger than his house. So that's just to give you the props of the day. Now, he's also put money away in his 401k. He's got a substantial retirement in the 401k. He's got money. David's setting up the men. That's good. Now, let's talk about Artie's printing business. He needs capital. Charlie agrees to guarantee the bank loan, a $200,000 loan on the building. He's guaranteeing several, printers have expensive printing equipment, $200,000 in leases. And then Charlie gets an idea. He says, I'm loaning Artie all this money. I should look out and protect my investment.
And Charlie is not an attorney?
Charlie's not an attorney.
But he's going to play attorney.
Yes. So Charlie says, Artie, I want 20% interest in the business.
Equity.
Seems as though I'm financing the whole thing. You're my brother-in-law, but fair is fair.
Or detriment rather than
I
equity.
want to be a check signer on the checks. I want to know what's going on so I can watch the books, and I want to be an officer of the corporation. Artie says, fine, do whatever you want to do. It's your money. We're brothers, man. Let's whatever you want to do. So they go ahead and do that, and just keep those facts in mind because they come back later and they become important. So now we have the sage stat. Artie's now in business. As time goes on, the business is there, but it's not quite doing well enough. It's short on cash.
Yeah, that personal computer with everyone doing their own stationery sort of took a hit in there.
Yeah, printing business has been tough over the last 20 years. A lot of changes. So they're short on cash, so Charlie's kicking in more. He takes out a whole bunch of credit cards, corporate cards, business cards, but they're under Charlie's name, his personal social security number. But, so the company's charging expenses.
So how much did he rack up?
Pay. A couple $100,000. He's racked up a lot. It keeps going and building. He goes to like a bank and borrows some cash from the bank, puts that into the company. As time continues to go on, Artie, who's running the show, he's stressed over the lack of cash. He doesn't have enough cash to make the payroll tax deposits for the business for his employees. So he says, you know what? IRS isn't next to me. I won't file the returns. They won't know about it. I'll get caught up when the business gets better. So now, tax deposits stop happening.
You want some water?
Thank you for throwing the water in the bowl at me. So here is where they stand now. The business is now closed. Artie couldn't make it. And it's 2009, the heart of the financial crisis. House is underwater. The $800,000 mortgage on the house is only worth $400,000. There's a second mortgage on this house for another $100,000. The building where the printing company is in a commercial area that has absolutely no market value right now. The bank doesn't even want to foreclose on the house. They're just going to end up suing Charlie on the $200,000 that's owed. The equipment leases have defaulted. There's $100,000 owed on those. The equipment companies have taken back the printers. They've sold them. The balance owed is a $100,000 deficiency. The credit cards on the business, $200,000 that Charlie owes.
At what interest rate?
22 to 30% interest on the credit cards. Bad situation. Charlie has personal credit cards because he's been living the big lifestyle with his cars and his boats and having some fun. He owes $100,000 on his personal cards. He still has $500,000 in his 401k. His income's still $300,000. Lucy's got $60,000 of credit card debt in her name. The IRS has come and investigated and assessed a trust fund penalty against Artie and who? Charlie, because Charlie's a check signer and an officer of the company for the unpaid trust fund portion of the payroll taxes. That's $75,000. Not a good situation all of a sudden that Charlie and Lucy find themselves in, and they have to. We're not going to talk about for now Artie and Fran. We're going to focus on what about Charlie and Lucy. They're still making $360,000 a year. He's got $500,000 in his 401k, but he's being sued up the gazoo by the credit card companies, the bank, the leasing companies. IRS collection officers called him, has already assessed him on the trust fund taxes and saying, you need to pay. He's got himself a big problem. Big, really big problem. So the question is, what can he do to solve that problem?
They come to you and say,
and deal with it.
What are we going to do?
Move to Guam.
We're going to need to explore their options and figure out what they do, and we'll do that after the break.
Do you have tax problems, unfiled returns, facing levies on wages in your property? You need an expert, not a cartoon character or salesman. Thav Gross is your solution.
You need to look at the big picture. That's what we do. We develop a plan that's right for you.
I had major tax problems. I didn't know what to do.
We did. We sat down together and solved your tax problem.
No more letters, no more phone calls. They saved me.
Call Thav Gross, 888-235-HELP.
Double Action, shooting center and gun shop. For the largest selection of guns, accessories, and ammunition, Double Action is your only pro gun shop. And now you can train with the best in our basic CCW course. With the most comprehensive curriculum, the best resources, and most accomplished staff. Don't be fooled by cheap imitations. Double Action is the only place to get your CCW or renewal. Double Action. We're on DeQuinder and Madison Heights.
Financially strapped? Do you want to save your home?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
We're Thav Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Every family has the family meeting, and we all know what that means. Dad's got dementia. What are we going to do? What's the care plan that the family has in place? Usually they don't, or they struggle with a care plan. When you go home tonight and you talk to your tax person and you talk to your financial person, say, what's the plan that you have in place? And as soon as they don't give you an answer, give me a call, because I can do it for you.
Carrying too much debt? Dump your debt. Call Thav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Thav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Welcome back. All right, so Charlie and Lucy have come to us for help. They drove over here in their car. They're here. They're all stressed out. They're all worried. They're panicked. They're sitting there saying, do I just give up and jump into the water? What do I do? Is there a way of saving me? And the answer is yes. We're not going to let them drown in debt. So we're going to get.
Are Charlie and Lucy getting along?
They are getting along okay, but typical of any financial situation, it is causing stress. But they're together. They're a happy couple. What are our options? Okay, they're being sued. We know they have a lot of income. The question is, can they file bankruptcy? Can they file a Chapter 7? Can a Chapter 13 help them? What about a Chapter 11? Is there a solution outside of bankruptcy? What about the taxes? And they got $500,000 in their 401k. Is that vulnerable? These are big issues.
So you have hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, and you make $350,000 collectively. Is there a way out? Is that
there absolutely is a way out, and I'll tell you, Chapter 13 is not the solution.
All right, why? Let's rule. All right, let's. Here's what we do as lawyers: we analyze the problem. We look at what concepts we can use to resolve the problem, doing it in the most effective way, using the least costly way to shed the most amount of debt. So we're going to do an analysis, and the first thing I said is we rule things out, just like a doctor rules out diseases when he's trying to diagnose what a condition is. Same thing. Why is Chapter 13 out?
Well,
Brian?
This is easy because they exceed what's called the debt ceiling. You're not allowed to qualify for Chapter 13. You can't have more than $362,000 worth of unsecured debt.
So they're gone there.
They're gone.
What's the most amount of secured debt they can have?
$1,080,000 approximately.
Okay, so
they might have been okay
gone
on that one, but that's gone too.
Now what do you look at?
All right, so Chapter 13, we can cross that off the list of options if we have a pen.
There's a pen.
We take it and we just wipe out Chapter 13. It's gone.
Now, the next place,
Max from Blue Tax on the board would go, put an X through Chapter 13.
The next place I would actually go with this is I would look to see what I could do about the taxes before I started to deal with any of the other debt. The other debts, all the unsecured debts, the mortgages, all those things, there are solutions for.
Well, before you get to that, now I'll go along with you, but the question is, and we're going to dig into it, is there a way, because we've talked about bankruptcy a lot on the show, and we have this means test, is there a way that someone who's making $360,000 a year between husband and wife can possibly file a Chapter 7? The answer is yes, but it's not the normal situation.
The means test applies to consumer debt. Consumer debt is your ordinary debt that, like your mortgage,
my house debt,
your house,
my credit
car,
cards,
your credit cards that you use for personal use.
What about my business loans?
Absolutely not. That's
what about
not consumer debt?
Credit cards I used for the business.
That is also not consumer
What
debt.
if I use the credit card for the business to charge a stereo at my house?
Well, now you're starting to get into whether or not the card
along with
was used for personal or business.
Flat screen
if
TV.
you booked a loan receivable, you're fine, but it's not going to be considered business use.
Okay, but if I use it for business use, then it's a business debt.
Absolutely, and here's a beautiful way out of all this. If the majority of your debt is business-related debt, you know that nasty means test that I call the mean test?
Yes.
You don't have to take it.
All right, so that's a planning thing we're going to look at. We're going to examine Charlie and Lucy's situation to make an assessment how much personal debt versus business debt. That's where we're going. That might get it. This is thought process as we're digging in. How do we solve the problem? We're thinking maybe we can get to more business debt than personal and use Chapter 7.
Reminding
but will that help?
listeners
Will that help
here,
the taxes?
It won't. But reminding the listeners here, the facts as you gave them their personal debt exceeds their business debt at the moment.
Yeah, and we're going to get.
Okay, so the goal would be the desire.
We're going to examine that carefully in the next segment, actually.
So the desire would be to have more business debt than personal debt, because then you don't have to worry about this mean or means test. And what you're saying is there may be strategies to achieve that goal if you don't have that threshold met at first blush. Is that where we're going?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's where we're going. So let's talk about the tax issue first, and then we'll wrap up this segment, and we'll carry the tax issue over into the next segment, along with how we look at this business versus personal debt. But right now, on the tax issue, remember, go back, and when Charlie decided he wanted to be a check signer, Charlie decided he wanted to have his 20% equity and an officer of the company. That's why he ended up with this $75,000 of tax liability. This isn't his income taxes. This isn't anything he gained from. He's gotten assessed the payroll tax liability because Artie didn't pay the payroll taxes.
Right. It's called a trust fund assessment, and anyone who's on a W-2 knows that they have monies withheld from their income to pay over to Uncle Sam. We're talking about federal taxes right now. But what's also imposed upon every employer is that there's a like amount that the employer has to withhold. Now, the portion that is being held that is by the employer, that is the employee's money, is considered to be held by the employer in trust for the benefit of the employee, and they must pay it over to the government.
And
that's where personal liability
comes. That's where you get taxed. Right? Now, what I want to say, remember, Charlie was acting like his own lawyer, and he was trying to protect his investment. What else could he have done to protect his investment rather than becoming a check signer on the account and an officer of the company?
Well, first of all, if he would have come into us and said, "I need protection. I'm going to be an officer."
Well, if he would have went to Brian, Brian would have said, "Don't do it. Don't do it."
No, he's in the scenario. If he says, "I'm going to go and I'm going to be a check signer and I'm going to get report," no. Absolutely not.
Because we'd be worried about the trust fund liability.
You're not going to be an officer. You're not going to be a check signer, because I could tell you 100% of the time, the first thing that the revenue officer does is subpoena the bank account records and ask to see the signature cards. Now, it's a weighted factor. They look at a whole bunch of things to determine if you're responsible, but always, they start by subpoenaing the bank. They want to know who's on the signature cards.
So we would never let him do that. We would have had him take a security interest in the assets to protect himself. He would have told him to examine financial statements and watch the bank accounts and make sure you get the taxes.
There's only one thing he could have done worse.
We're going to take
There's only one thing he could have done worse.
What's that?
He could have had Lucy as an officer also, and a signer.
That would have been a really bad move. It's a good point. Next segment, we're going to carry forward good old Charlie.